If you've been stuck in the loop and struggling to finish more tracks, then this could be the secret to finish 10 times more tracks like it did with me. So about 18 months ago, I was in the exact same position and I was really struggling to finish tracks. And I realized it was because I was spending so much time on the nitty-gritty of each sound and the mixing of each sound before the track was even finished, and it was really killing my flow. So I decided to change my mindset and create a rack that was going to allow me to work much faster. And it really did. It almost made me create enough music for a full album in that year. Now, I'm a full believer in you can't mix everything to 100% until all the other elements are in the track anyway. But I was always falling into that trap of getting into the nitty-gritty of the mixing during the writing process. So I gave myself one rule, and that was I can only use this rack for mixing during the writing phase. And this rack allows me to get to 80 to 90% of the mixing, and it stops me from getting like sidetracked by any other mixing along the way, and has allowed me to keep on track to get tracks actually finished. It's been my go-to now, so whenever I start a track, I'll slap this rack on the channel, on every channel, and I only use it whilst writing, and it's allowed me to create so much more music. It's been unbelievable. So let's have a little look at what the rack is all about, and if this is something that interests you, then be sure to check it out in the link in the description below. Okay, so I'll give you a quick overview of the rack, and then I'll show you what some of the parameters are for and what they do and how they might be useful inside a mix scenario. Okay, so this is the rack. So what we have here is we have a number of different macros that have been set up in a way that allow me to, when I'm mixing, go, right, what quick dials can I turn to get a mix to sound 80 to 90%. This isn't about getting it absolutely perfect right now, but I've gone and mapped all of the macros that I believe that will get me to 80 to 90% of the mix. And these are macros that I will generally, if I can't get a sound sounding great from these macros, then either my sound design's off or I'm choosing the wrong sound. So they're there to sort of really get that nice, quick, solid mix from just these macros. So first up, we've got gain. One of the most important things in any mix is your level of that exact sound that you're working on. We have the width of the sound. So this macro here, you can either go wider, more narrow, and if you bring it all the way to the left, it will actually switch it into mono. We have bass mono here, so you can dial this up to whichever frequency that you want to make that anything below that frequency mono. Then here we have a low cut and a high cut. Now underneath here, you'll also notice you have low cut res and high cut res. So this will add resonance to the actual point at which this frequency is. So you can use it for filtering in and out sounds, adding little bumps at frequency points in the mix, whatever you want. So that's why they're in the same color there. So this is in correlation to this one here, and this one is in correlation to this one here. So you could set the resonance, use them as filters. This is the other good thing about this rack is I've been using it as well to sort of help with transitions and stuff like that. Then what I have here is a low and a high EQ. Now this is more of a shelf. So if I'm listening to a mix and I'm like a bit too much top end, all I can do is bring it down, bring out some of the tops. If it's got a bit too much low, just bring out the low. Again, quick balancing, quick EQ techniques to get that sound to that 89% mark. Then I have a clipper if I want to control some of the peaks. So I'll show this in action in a little bit. We have a phase shift, so we can slightly shift the phase of sounds if they're slightly off, whether that's your kick and bass alignment with the phase in the tail of your kick and your bass, or any other sound really. We have a compression dial, which is just a simple compressor, just to sort of add a bit of compression on. If sounds again a little bit too crazy, there, just again, not the perfect compression settings for every single use case, but it's a level of compression to help quickly get right. Dial in some compression, move on. And then again, later on, if you want to go in and do the fine tweaking later on, that's totally fine. This rack is about getting things done quick and fast. Also gone through the low cut res and high cut res. Then we have a mud cutter, which is basically just going to pull out some mud if a certain sound is sounding a bit muddy in that muddy frequency range. And then finally, we have a phase flip. So if you flip this over, it's going to flip the phase of the sound. So if there's ever a sound that's sitting in a mix that isn't sitting quite right, I'll sometimes flip the phase to see if it sounds better with the phase flipped. And again, just really quick and easy to just kind of flip that over, flip it back over. So yeah, that's an overview of the rack. Okay, so let's take a look at the rack being used on some material. So what I've got here is just a bass line, and I have It's just a bassline loop from the website. If you want to check it out, it's the Trance Bass Loops. But what I've got here as well is an LFO tool to give you a visual representation of what's happening. And here's the rack. Now, before we go into the rack, we do have some presets here. So we've got the initiated preset. We've got some other presets here, which I'll flick through some depending on what sound we're on. For example, this bassline sound that we've got here, we've got the sub bass preset, which will make it sound more like a sub bass, mid bass, high bass. So different presets for different sort of material there. Just close that off. So going through this, actually, let's just quickly put the initiated preset back on. So going through this, we've got the width. So if all the way to the left is mono. And then anything above that is sort of like spreading the sound width-wise. We have the bass mono, so anything below a certain frequency we can put as mono. Then we have the low cut. We can use the low cut resonance to sort of give it a bit of a sweep. And dial this in however much of that sort of twangy sweep you want. So that's that. Then we have like your high cut, same thing again there. So good for sort of filtering or using it in transitions as well. Let's put the resonance up a little bit. So we've got the filtering. Then we have just like your high and low bands for your EQ. I find these really useful for just sort of quickly listening to the sound and saying, is this balanced right? Does it need a little bit more high, a little bit more low? So really sort of just there for quick mixing. Then we have the clipper. So if we want to tame these peaks in here, for example. We can give those transients a little bit of a haircut there. I'll do phase shift on the kick in a minute and you'll be able to see that there. Compression I'll do on another one as well. Mud cutter, we can use this on the bass. So we can scoop out some of those muddy frequencies there, and then I'll also show you the phase flip. It'll be easier to see on another element as well. So let's go to, for example, like the drums. So again, we could use like the clipper to trim. If you find it's not getting clipped or the compression isn't getting isn't triggering, then just use the gain input here. So that's the clipper. Again, you've got a compressor, so you can compress these. So you can see it there, bringing down some of the transients and bringing up some of those lower parts there with the compression. So that's that. Okay, so let's show you some of the parameters on a kick here. This is just a 909 kick from the sample pack on the website. So you can see it here. So we have phase shift. So you can see it's shifting the phase there. That's always great for if you're, you know, your kick and bass aren't aligning perfectly how you want them. You can shift the phase there a little bit. As just one example to use the phase shift. Then we have the phase flip. So if I play the kick here, and if I just, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it now. Now, if I flip the phase and play it again, I'm going to hold this mouse. I'll hold it on this one, and you'll see it flip the phase. It's now completely flipped it. So always useful if there's ever a sound in your track where you're listening to it and you're thinking it's not quite sitting perfect. I always try and flip the phase and just sort of see, you know, if it can sound better in the mix there. So that's there for that. Got some presets for kicks. For example, we have the kick duller. So if you're transient on your kicks a little bit too hard or a little bit too snappy, a little bit too harsh, we use the kick duller. This kick's transient isn't overly intense anyway, so some of the little presets we've got here, like distorted kick, so we can distort any kick. There's a preset here called tighter kick. So this is it without the quick mix rack on the kick, and this is it with the tighter kick. Then I have stuff like low cut sweep. So these are just some presets to help you. This is for more of like a transition. So, you know, if you're transitioning into a track, you can use just go over to the low cut here, and I've sort of set the resonance at a level where I think it sounds quite nice for those sort of transitions. But obviously have a play around, set your own presets, whatever you want to do. We've got one called high kick transition here, which I think is good for certain sections of a track where you might want to drop the level of the kick, sit it further back in the mix, and then bring it back in again, something like this. So we've got the kick playing. Automate it down like this, and then as the transition comes in, little things like that will help with just speeding up process of transitions and stuff like that. So yeah, there's some of the presets, and I think that's everything. So yeah, as I said, this rack is designed to really speed up your flow. It's to stop you from getting into the nitty gritty, getting those sounds to that 80-90% mark, so that you can carry on with focusing on the writing, the ideas, so that you're not like, it's a huge sort of like, what's the best way to describe it? It massively distracts me when I start EQing and stuff like that. And this has massively helped me keep on track and keep my ideas flowing, slap that on every channel, and away you go. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you haven't yet checked it out, be sure to head over to alamorstudios.com and grab your copy. And also be sure to check out the other racks available there for creative purposes and also other utilities as well. So thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.